into Airbnb and Uber. So pretty much this whole anti-policy, anti-government policy. So if you want to be rich, bet against the government. I very much like that philosophy. And on top of what is really happening, Jeff, would you be so kind to comment on what are you thinking about Bitcoin at these prices? 50,000?
Yes, I think one of the reasons why I was very interested in speaking again is because I noticed that as Bitcoin really has surged for the last couple of months, that outcome the usual suspects of, Powell and Yellen and Munger yesterday. And so you begin to see the establishment coming out, trying to instill fear in holding Bitcoin. Something that I know that there continues to be a lot of debate over this topic. The conversation about, means of payment versus store of value. And so I would just like to remind people that most money is used as a store of value. Only a small percentage of money is used as a form of payment.
Mm-hmm.
The most narrow monetary aggregate, is M1. The monetary aggregate that most monetary authorities use throughout the world, most central banks, is in reference to M2. M2 is basically transaction balances plus, savings accounts. So of the M2 number, M1, which is the transaction balance component, represents about 25% of M2. So most of M2 is money used for savings, not used for payments. And the broader the aggregate you get, like an M3 or other indices, then even the smaller percentage of transaction balances represent as a percentage of total money. So money is used more to make money than to spend money. So the greatest use for money is making money, not spending money. And then with people who make money get to spend more money, but ultimately the goal is to accumulate wealth. We want to use our money, we want to use our physical capital, our financial capital, to basically create wealth. And then we'll consume part of that wealth that we accumulate over our lifetimes. Unless we don't accumulate very much, then we'll be spending all our wealth and basically accumulating no wealth and just spending everything that we make. So the greatest use of money is to make more money with the money that we have. Okay, and so from the perspective of a store of value, okay, there's been no better store of value than Bitcoin, period. Okay. Also, given the volatility of Bitcoin, it's very easy to talk about the volatility in the absence of the return related to that volatility.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? Michael Munger, Janet Yellen, well, Powell's an attorney, so how much he really understands about markets, who knows? But Yellen knows better and Munger knows better. Okay, Charlie Munger, I think is that you understand that for a given level of risk, you figure out how much reward you're willing to take for the level of risk that you're assuming. Okay, and every quantitative study has shown that Bitcoin rewards you a lot more in return, given the unit of risk that you get related to the return that it provides. So to just talk about the risks in the isolation of return is doing, again, what every government likes to do, is sell fear, keep you afraid, okay? People who want to keep you afraid, do you think they want to keep you independent or dependent, okay? They want you to be dependent. They don't want you to be, and I've used this term before in interviews, here is that we were founded not as a sovereign nation, but what was unique about the United States of America, unique about America, is we were founded as a nation of sovereign individuals, okay? We were the first nation established by our Constitution and Bill of Rights and Declaration of Independence as a nation of sovereign individuals, okay? So make no mistake about this, the government doesn't want you to be sovereign, it wants them to be sovereign, okay? And what in other states in Europe, how did they refer to kings and queens? As your sovereign, okay? They were sovereign, you weren't, okay? In the United States of America, we're supposed to be sovereign, okay? Not the government, we are. And they want to turn that on its head, and they want to make themselves sovereign, and the only way to do that is to keep establishing fear. They do not want you to be independent from them. They want you to be dependent. Their power grows as your power contracts. So it's almost like really a zero-sum game, is that they win at your expense. So if the choice you want to make is you don't care about personal sovereignty, if you want to live enslaved to a system that's designed to have them extract most of the wealth and keep you dependent, not independent, then pay attention to them, because that's what they want.
Question is, who is
If you want to accumulate wealth, okay, you're not going to do it on the most part, for very few people, are going to do it, in the established financial system. Think about how many people that got wealthy because they bought Bitcoin, that would have never had the opportunity of having that type of wealth if they had to rely upon what instruments were eligible for them to buy according to the SEC. Okay, so unless you're an accredited investor, it's really hard to become an accredited investor if you're not an accredited investor, because you either have to have a very high-paying job, or you have to have an entrepreneur that has had a reasonable level of success. And the statistics recently in the U.S. history has been upward mobility people have not been very upwardly mobile recently. So there has not been a lot of upward mobility. That used to be the story of this country. It's no longer the story of this country. This is the big becoming bigger and the small disappearing.
So who is then driving the price of Bitcoin? Because if you look at the whole distribution, the majority of kind of Bitcoins is still split amongst very, very few. I'm assuming some of those are poor who became rich.
But that's the choice of it. That's the choice of individuals. It's I started giving. I think somebody. I don't know the year I first started giving talks. Somebody told me the first time they saw me or heard me talk about Bitcoin was 2012. So in 2012, Bitcoin was under $100. Okay, so if people who listened to that first talk had bought some Bitcoin and held it, like I've advised everyone to do, is buy and hold. Okay, and then everyone that listened would be very wealthy today.
I heard you talk in the chats in March of 2020, and I was asking permission to quote you when you were advising everybody to. Well, you were not advising; it was no financial advice, of course. But you said that you've been mentioned that you accumulated at 4,000, 3,500 those prices. That's 10x in less than a year.
Yes. So I think since you and I first talked, if anybody listened to me, they would be a lot wealthier today. And again, I'm someone talking who I don't own an exchange. I'm not selling myself as an influencer.
Of course.
I don't charge for the talk. I don't charge to do tweets. Okay. I don't charge for anything. Okay. I just give advice, and I give advice where at the end of the day, I don't profit off the advice, because independent whether people have paid attention to the advice or not, I've accumulated a lot more wealth along the way. So, and I believe I will continue to, whether people pay attention to me or not. So I'm not doing this so that, I can, so that I can become an influencer, that people pay me to influence people, that I create exchange, that I'm promoting a project. Okay. I don't promote any projects. I don't promote anything other than the idea that people should be sovereign individuals, and there's only one route to sovereignty, okay, which is not entering a system controlled by the government, okay, is to be in a world that is as permissionless and censorship resistant as possible, okay, where the government has little to no power, over you or over what you are interacting with. So that's the world of liberty and freedom, the basis under which this country was founded upon, and which I think we've lost our orientation. People should realize the government right now, I saw a poll I read from, I think, the Wall Street Journal that this was an almost $2 trillion spending stimulus package, quote
Yep.
stimulus package. The stimulus package doesn't stimulate anything other than stimulating more debt, so more debt slavery for the next generation, that they're going to be handed the bill, so that that's even 50% of Republicans support the stimulus package. So people are buying into this Keynesian model, that we're not at full employment, the Phillips curve, that there's this inflation unemployment trade-off. The Phillips curve has been discredited a long time. What you really have, the system is trying to preserve itself, because in a year of lockdown, so many people have gone out of business, and so many people have so little hope. Okay, that this is just a giant bribe, to keep people from engaging in a revolution against the system. So what they all agree upon is to preserve stability. They just got to give a lot of free money out to a lot of people. That's very sad, that to preserve stability in the country, what we have to have is the government spend as much, the government has to run the size of deficits that it runs now, just to bribe people to behave well, because otherwise their lives would be so gloomy otherwise. That's very, very sad. They're going to build, citizens that all are dependents. So dependents upon the states. So they'll build citizens that are children rather than adults. People that have to live off of the state, not off of what they create, but off the government borrowing money, printed money, that then they're handled to them as if this is a free lunch, that you can ride this free lunch forever. So it's a fantasy world that they're trying to convince people, and people, for the time being, until they start seeing more consequences associated with this, are happy to, live this fantasy world, because the reality is too ugly for them. So the fantasy is kind of appealing.
That's a new definition of capitalism, right? Apparently, since in the most capitalistic country in the world, this thing is happening, it's just a disaster.
We're not a capitalist country. As
Well,
I've
since
said
1913.
before,
Yep.
we're not capitalist. Okay, I wrote an article calling "Make America Capitalist Again." Okay, because we are not capitalist. Most people, have not seen capitalism. We've seen a state encroach upon the economy more and more, but we are very far from a capitalist country. As what I call it. I call it a crony, corrupt, corporatist cartel. That's what it is. It's not a capitalist society. We're not a capitalist society. No society is a capitalist society, where almost everything you need to do, you need to get permission. Okay, and the government is getting less. It gets harder and harder to get that permission. Where more things are subject to censorship, more people are subject to being canceled. Okay, and more things are subject to getting the permission of the government. So how do you call that? Our choices are being restricted, not enhanced. Okay, taxes are going up, regulations are going up, executive orders are going up. So how in what way do we resemble a capitalist country?
Go back to your
How
point.
capital is allocated is not determined by markets.
Go back to your point about entrepreneurship. Why there's few and fewer successful entrepreneurs in this country, and because of the reasons you mentioned: over regulations, taxes, orders.
Yeah, all of that. The government punishes success unless you're a big crony, and then the government subsidizes you. If you're a bank, the government subsidizes you. If you're Facebook and Google, the government subsidizes you. If you're Twitter, the government subsidizes you. So most and then if you're enough politically active, and you can make your voice heard, you also get a subsidy. But at the end of the day, none of this is done in what when I went to studied economics, they have this concept called, they teach you about Pareto optimality. It basically says you should value government policy from the perspective of, is it making some people, better off while making other people's worse off, and therefore then you're making a moral judgment about, is the trade-off an acceptable trade-off, as opposed to, are you making some people better off without making anyone else worse off? So I don't think the government is engaged in any policy whatsoever that has not had losers. Okay. So the government now is making judgments about who should be a winner and who should be a loser, not engaging in policies that make some or most of us or all better off without making anyone else worse off. Now it's about trade-offs. It's about going and lobbying government so you win at somebody else's expense. So so the government has encouraged a system where people are at war with each other because the government grants favors, and they grant favors to some that are paid for by others. So the government induces this state of people at war with each other because to the extent that the society stays divided is what gives government power. People being in fear and people playing the game that if you ask permission, you're asking permission at somebody else's expense. Your win is somebody else's loss. It's not like your win has no consequence on somebody else. No, your win is at the expense of somebody else. So you want to fight aggressively to win at other people's expense because either you win at their expense or they win at your expense. So think about the motivations involved. Is every time I go to Washington, I know that if I don't fight to win at other people's expense, they'll fight to win at my expense. That's the game of Washington, D.C. You think that's a capitalist, and the fact that people spend so much money on campaigns and lobbying is an indication of how important the decisions government rules are on our lives. If government was irrelevant, it wasn't so relevant to our day-to-day lives, we wouldn't spend so much money on campaigns. But industries spend a lot of money because they understand the value of the preferences they get are extremely valuable. So given the fact that they're extremely valuable, they'll spend a lot of money preserving that value. That's not capitalism.
Question is still, who is driving the price?
Not remotely near capitalism.
Who is driving the price of Bitcoin? Is it inflation only? Is it an inflation play?
I think it's not an inflation play. It's a play on the fact that fiat is going to fail. That every country around the world is debasing their money. All currencies are run based upon a breach of trust. Okay, what people forget about Bitcoin and the technology embedded in Bitcoin is called trustless technology. You trust the ledger. It can't be debased. It's censorship resistant. Okay, it's privacy preserving. It's permissionless. And the ledger is immutable and the token is immutable. It's not subject to being modified. No authority figure can change any attribute about it. So you trust that. You don't trust anything else. So I think most rational people understand that the government can't run these types of deficits, print this type of money, keep interest rates low forever, and the fact that there would not be a bad consequence to this. So that's why, the wealthy, they go out and they buy their private islands, they stock up on weapons, they have homes all over the world. They're hedged, okay? So they can sit and say, I love my country all they want, but they're hedging for disaster, okay? They don't like to talk about all the money they've spent hedging for disaster, but they're all hedging for disaster. Even Warren Buffett, made some investment in the gold stocks. So, he's decided to go in for gold. Whether he owns Bitcoin, probably not. But some of them might even own Bitcoin and might not want to acknowledge that they own Bitcoin, because they have so much embedded net worth in this current system, that they don't want to say and advertise that they've given up hope in the current system. So they're doing it quietly.
Wait, but gold doesn't make any cash flow. That's what Warren Buffett has been telling us for years, that you do not invest into any asset that does not produce any cash flow.
Not many businesses produce very much cash flow. So Tesla doesn't produce much cash flow. Apple produces, but Buffett likes businesses, that produce cash flow. So, that's fine. There are not a lot of businesses that produce a lot of cash flow these days.
I think it's just a little bit contradictory. I think Warren Buffett, with all due respect to Warren Buffett, one of my previous heroes, is a little bit
Buffett's a crony himself.
Opportunistic.
Buffett's invested in businesses that have made him money because of his relationship with the government.
Exactly.
So he's a crony. He's a crony also. So he has a nice facade about him, but he's a crony also. He's made money off the crony system. He got a crony deal when he went into Salomon Brothers. He got a crony deal, when he went into Goldman Sachs. He's been a beneficiary of a lot of crony deals. So his a lot of the investments he made were beneficiaries of the bailouts that have occurred. They're beneficiary of the interest rate policy run by the Fed. So people have a lot of embedded network in the system, and they understand that the only thing they have to go for them is to keep the bubble going as long as possible, and that they then generate enough cash out of other things so that what they own, at least can generate enough cash flow that they can hedge their risk by generating enough cash flow and investing in other things that are a hedge against what they already own. Some people can't do that. People who are all in on real estate, they're stuck. So, they can refinance their real estate, take the money out, get non-recourse loans, and take the refinanced real estate, invest it in something else, and when the real estate goes bust, it'll be the bank's problems and the government's problem when the real estate goes bust, because they will have taken out of their equity and they'll have no clawback provisions, in the contracts that they wrote with the financial institutions.
And the solution will be to, I guess, print more money.
That's the only answer they have, is printing money and keeping interest rates low. They have no other solution. That's what Powell said. That's how fragile the circumstances are. Okay, talk about a nice recovery. We have no recovery. We have the Fed expanding its balance sheet. We have Powell saying, don't worry, we'll keep interest rates low. We have Yellen saying, let's keep interest rates low. And then we have everyone saying, let's spend a lot of money, but be fearful of Bitcoin. They want you to be fearful of something they don't produce. What they want to sell you is the idea. The only thing you can trust is what they tell you. Okay? So they want you to be dependent upon them. They don't want you to be free-thinking individuals. They don't want you to accumulate knowledge. They don't want you to take risks. They want to direct your lives. They want to treat people like dependents. And maybe a lot of people are satisfied with that. Maybe a lot of people are saying, give me my universal basic income, give me a house, and I don't want to have to worry about anything. I don't want to have to work hard. I want to, have an easy job, and I want to be taken care of. And the question is how sustainable it is, that we can continue to take care of people like that. As Thatcher said, eventually you run out of other people's money. The question is, are we creating odious debt? Debt that today people are benefiting from, that they'll pass on to their kids. Their grandchildren are going to be handed the bill. And they're going to sit back and say, I have no benefits, but I got the huge bill I have to pay for, and I got a bankrupt government that can't provide anything for me, yet I'm handed the bill because the other people didn't want to pay for everything they got. So I don't think you develop a moral society. What you develop is a society, again, where the incentives are for everyone to be at war with everyone else. My gain is your loss. Your loss is my gain. So there is no win-win. There's win-lose. Okay, it's just a matter of everybody wants to fight to win at the trade-offs.
Mm-hmm.
Or to pretend that trade-offs don't exist.
Because
they don't want to acknowledge that they're bad people, that they want to win at other people's expense. So since they don't want to acknowledge that they want to win at other people's expense, they pretend that trade-offs don't exist. They lie to themselves and they lie to other people as a consequence of lying to themselves.
Or get too comfortable living in a fearful life, because it's so much easier to persuade yourself that that's what you need and it's going to be forever. While in reality, sustaining so many lifestyles is impossible for a continuous period of time for one nation.
I've always said freedom and responsibility are two sides of the same coin. The less responsible we are, the more we'll lose our freedom. And maybe people value freedom less and less. But if people value freedom less and less, it's because people are at a point of it's really just about survival. So, which means that we're going down the Maslow pyramid, not up the Maslow pyramid. So that's a very, very bad statement about humanity. If we've spent, these centuries climbing up the pyramid, to only realize that we're now climbing back down. That we're not looking for more personal fulfillment. That we feel everything is just about survival. But who's convinced us that everything is just about our survival? Is the government. So for me, Bitcoin has always represented, as I said, almost more than just money. It's a concept. It's an ideal. It's a philosophy. It's a philosophy. It's a philosophy that we are sovereign individuals. And I don't know what the United States of America will look like, 20, 30 years from now, and even less if we continue on the course we're at right now. It's a very, very sad prospect for me to think about.
What has to happen to be, you touched upon before, but kind of from a more detailed perspective, I guess, what has to happen to Bitcoin for you personally to start unwinding your positions in that asset?
At this point, I don't see. I would see if the government adopted something like a gold standard. If the government, if government stopped printing money and gave itself discretion in the production of money, and we had an anchor on the production of money that was not controlled by sovereign nations, that would have me, reconsider my position on Bitcoin. But until then, again, Bitcoin with its current rally is still a small percentage of the market cap of gold.
100%. 1/10, is it? Or 5% or 10%? How much is it?
It's like 15, 20% of the market cap of gold. So even at these current prices, in terms of gold, Bitcoin is very cheap. So if you take a look at the game of what's the best alternative form of money, outside of quote fiat, people still value gold weighing as a store of value for money, as a better form of money rather than Bitcoin. Okay, someone who owns both gold and Bitcoin, for me, Bitcoin is a much better store of value than gold. So I think that adoption will continue to grow. There'll be periods of point in time like this where the government will instill a lot of fear in people and hype the volatility and use every sell-off of 10, 15, 20%, to instill a lot of fear in people. But I think in every talk that I've given about Bitcoin, I told people, don't trade it. Think about it at least in terms of holding it for at least 5 years. And that if you wait 5 years, you'll find out it's worth a lot more than the price you bought it at. And that you'd have to understand that there's going to be a lot of volatility. So you have to have the stomach to absorb that level of volatility. But in the end, you'll be rewarded for absorbing that volatility. And so far, throughout the history of Bitcoin, my statement has been a fair and accurate statement. So they don't want you to have the context of really what the reward is, and then they compare it against the currency transaction utility as opposed to the store value utility. So they're taking the convenient argument for them to make an invalid point. So what they have produced is what they've been in control over is a Ponzi scheme shitcoin. Okay, so it's a Ponzi scheme financial system and a shitcoin that's impoverished so many people and has created the worst perverse allocation of wealth, not driven by entrepreneurship, but driven by the Cantillon effect, not entrepreneurship. So that's the society they designed. Okay, nobody should trust anything that comes out of their mouth. It's just noise. It's noise and bullshit.
You're referring to the United States dollar as a shitcoin, correct?
Yes, the U.S. dollar is a shitcoin. Yes, it is a shitcoin. It's the most dangerous. It's the most dangerous shitcoin in the world.
Even more dangerous than Dogecoin?
The U.S. dollar is the most dangerous shitcoin in the world.
That's funny. Funny because it's because there's truth to any joke. So mhm. I guess last thing to cover for today, if that's okay with you. This whole game stuff, this whole whether this is real pro people revolution or not, as far as GameStop, right, and Dogecoin, all those rallies that supposedly have been fired up by retail flow found on Reddit. Everybody has been discussing that. What is your take? Is it really retail? What's the institutional behind it? Is it anything special? Do we need to pay attention to this? Is it the future of decentralized finance, or just a bunch of hedge funds grouped up together to bankrupt other hedge funds?
No, I think most of the work being done in decentralized finance, I'm kind of skeptical of. But to have a Reddit community game Wall Street, I love. So Wall Street has gamed everyone for for a very long period of time. So I find it very ironic how thin-skinned they are when they're victims of the same type of games they perpetrate against everyone every day. So they don't like being. They like being that they're not accustomed to being a loser in the game because they always work with government to make sure no matter what they always win. So they've had rules established that they always win. Okay, always. And now some people lost. And they say, "Holy shit! I'm not used to actually losing." What the fuck? These millennials got together and started organizing themselves on Reddit and gamed us. It's not supposed to work that way. No, I like this stuff. So I like people, creative people looking to say, the system's gamed us. We're gonna gain back. So I don't see anything wrong from what I've read. Unless somebody points out to some law that they've broken. But if a group wants to, you get a lot of groups that get together and say, "Hi, let's go buy this stock." So let's go buy this stock together. So I don't know what securities law they broke. Probably none. That's why they're trying to look at how they can alter securities laws to make sure nobody can do that again. Because again, Wall Street's a crony economy. Somebody at Wall Street got upset. These people write a lot of money to a lot of campaigns. They call up their congressman and senator, say, "Don't you remember I bought you? I own you. How could you let something like this happen to me?" Okay? And next time if you let this happen to me again, I'm going to throw my money towards somebody else who will protect me. That's your business. Your business is to be my protection racket. Okay? That's what I pay you for. I pay you to protect me. Don't protect me. I'll pay somebody else who will do a better job at protecting me than you guys are. So they have to go out and they call their committees and do whatever studies and say horrible things, to put feet again to sell fear, because that's all they got is fear and intimidation. They got the guns. They control the laws. They can apply them any way they want to. They can interpret them any way they want to, and so they have pretty much unlimited, unchecked power. And so they'll suppress anything that's not convenient for them. And people playing, these types of games of looking for ways of, quote, arbitraging the system for their benefit, doing things clever, not illegal. And I applaud. What they did was clever. Doesn't seem to be illegal. If it proves to be illegal, I won't support it. But if it was just clever and that's it, then they should be applauded for their creativity. And to the extent that government said, "Oh, we don't want people doing this, let's close this loophole so nobody else can do what they did," so to deter that behavior, that's not right.
Mm-hmm.
They should be applauded.
Mm-hmm. But the government will probably find that they broke some kind of law. When consortiums of banks do the same thing to any asset,
Look what's
that's
happening
fine.
today now. There's more and more rules now. Think about this is a blockchain. The blockchain was supposed to be building a decentralized ecosystem.
Yes.
So what do you read about Uber now? Uber and Lyft. More and more of the people who drive cars are being deemed employees. So this whole idea of creating decentralized entities, is government doesn't like that. They want to be able to hold somebody responsible who they can put laws on, restrict, intimidate, tax, and still feed. So what happens is here you have a system where Uber and Lyft say, I'm trying to match people who want to do business with each other. I'm not employing people. I'm providing information. Everyone who has can see the attributes of their driver. They can see their rating, how long they've driven, how many miles, so you have a lot of information. And then the consumer makes a decision, okay, I want this person to drive me. If not, the consumer can say reject that person and go again and look for somebody else to drive them. But and all it is, it's software matching parties together. And so now the government says, no, you're not software matching parties together, that you're basically collecting a fee for matching. The drivers are paying you a fee for helping them locate people who want to use their services. So instead of having, be like an agent on behalf of drivers out there who want to match themselves, who can be on Lyft and can be on other things and can be on DoorDash and Postmates, and they can be delivering all the different things they want to deliver. Suddenly they're converted into employees. But what if somebody who's a driver on Uber is already a driver on Lyft and already a driver on DoorDash and also a driver, on Postmates and a driver on Caviar and a driver on Uber Eats, and then driving on. He said, who are they working for? Are they working for all of them? Some of them? One of them? How do you determine who they're working for? Which firm specifically are they working for? They're not employees. They're free agents who are looking to match up with people that need what they have to offer. And each of those platforms is taking a commission for helping reduce their search. That's it. So now the government wants to classify this as a very different business. Okay, so it wants to intrude on the marketplace and wants to convey responsibilities, to a company that should not really have those responsibilities. And all the people who got on to drive understood the rules of the game when they entered. They understood that they're just free agents who don't have to show up for work at all. They're not an employee because they don't have to show up for work. Okay, they're a free agent. The company has no authority over them whatsoever. Okay, none. People can drive 1 hour a day, 2 hours a day, 40 hours a day, 24 hours a day, 40 hours a week, 100 hours a week. It's all their choices. There's no rules placed upon them. Okay, other than the fact that if they have a rating below a certain amount, they're thrown out of the system, but the company doesn't set that rating. The rating is set by the users. The company's not evaluating them. The company's just evaluating what the consumers are evaluating in them, and then reacting based upon the choice of, here's our rule to be part of our ecosystem. You have to make the customers happy. And if you don't make the customers happy, we're booting you, we're not giving you access, to our platform. That's all. So that's the rule. And now these people are employees. This is all about power and control. This is how much the government is against a decentralized world. This is why we have to fight hard for a decentralized world. The government does not want us as sovereigns. Yep. They want us as slaves.
Biggest business in the world is any government, of course. Mm-hmm.
So think about how many people would have been independent if people would have listened to me from the first time somebody told me they heard me talk in 2012, buying Bitcoin under 100, or when I first spoke here, bought some Bitcoin. You didn't have to buy a lot of Bitcoin to make yourself reasonably financially independent. Okay. And, and that's freedom.
Yeah, but very, very few people are seeking for it. I mean, on such positive note, let's finish up for today. We'd love to have another. We'd like to hold another interview. There's too many things to discuss as well, about stable coins, your view on that, your view on DeFi, your view on the development of the infrastructures of the NFTs, the non-fungible tokens, stuff like this. But for now, ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for your attention. Jeffrey, thank you so much for all this information. I'm taking notes every single time we have this kind of interviews, and thank God I'm following some of the thoughts that you're portraying. So thank you so much.
My pleasure.
Thank you, Jeff. Have a good day. Thank you, guys. Bye-bye.